We all know farming has changed. With new and ever-advancing technologies, American farming and ranching doesn't look like it used to. Across the country, in operations big and small, we're making choices that help keep agriculture sustainable for your grandchildren and ours. Our values are the same. We grow crops and raise livestock and poultry so you can raise families that are happy and healthy. And thanks to innovations in agriculture, we're feeding more people with fewer resources. With innovation come questions, and we're here with answers. So let's talk. From basic terminology so you can speak the same language and ask the right questions, to complex topics like environmental impact and GMOs. Food dialogues exist to provide answers to your questions about food, straight from the people who produce it. So get to know who we are, how we work, and why we love what we do.
Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by Agri-Pulse Senior Editor Phil Brasher, discussing the week that was, agriculturally speaking, in Washington, D.C. And in Washington, D.C. this week, the news was really dominated by something that emerged late last week, that being tariff discussions from President Donald Trump and potential impacts those might have on agriculture, farm and food policy here going forward. We saw some more official action here on Thursday. I say Thursday, we're recording this here on Thursday afternoon, shortly after President Donald Trump addressed the country, laying out his plans for the tariffs. He expects he'll enact tariffs of 25% on steel and 10% on aluminum, will allow countries to pursue exemptions to those tariffs, and Canada and Mexico will be exempted. And Phil, that's something that really brings up a key point here in the farm policy circles, is that within the administration, we can report that they're seeing this as a negotiating tactic with NAFTA. On Capitol Hill, they're not seeing it that way?
No. There's as much anxiety on Capitol Hill among Republicans as there is out in the farm community, I think. Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue has been saying this week that defending the president's tariff plan ahead of its announcement, saying that this will help bring Mexico and Canada to the table to get concessions on NAFTA and on revisions that the president wants. However, a lot of Republicans on the Hill don't see it that way at all. Chairman of the Senate Agriculture Committee, Pat Roberts, saying just ahead of the president's announcement that he doesn't think this is a good idea at all, that Canada is prepared to retaliate. Even though they may be temporarily exempted, they are ready to retaliate if those tariffs are ever put on. Chairman Roberts has been talking to the Canadian Trade Minister and been in touch with her ahead of this announcement. And the other thing he said is that that just creates an atmosphere of instability around U.S. trade with our customers.
Mm-hmm. The administration and President Trump specifically saying that there's going to be a certain level of flexibility within these tariffs. He's directing U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer to negotiate with countries that are seeking tariff exemptions. We mentioned earlier that Canada and Mexico are being exempted, and so in a climate that typically prefers certainty and definitiveness, it looks like these tariffs are offering a lot of flexibility, and whether or not that's a good thing, I think, remains to be seen within the business circles. But I mean, Capitol Hill Republicans seem to have kind of already made up their mind on the subject.
Well, certainly Chairman Roberts sees that as instability. Yeah, ahead of this announcement, there were, over on the House side, there were over 100 Republicans, including the chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, Mike Conaway, the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, which has jurisdiction over trade policy, that sent the president a letter saying, don't do it, or if you do it, if you do go ahead with these tariffs, make them very narrow. And so a lot of pushback from the Hill may have had some impact, but in the end, the president went forward with them.
Phil, you mentioned some correspondence from Chairman Conaway. I understand you had a chance to speak with him on a different subject earlier today as Congress on Capitol Hill gears up to write a new farm bill. We have a little bit more of a definitive picture about the timeline that Chairman Conaway looks to pursue.
Well, so we got something on the record from from the chairman. He hopes to release the draft bill next week. That would set up the committee debate the following week, right before Congress goes on recess for 2 weeks around Easter, and then the bill would be on the House floor after lawmakers return in April.
And in the Senate, anything coming into picture there?
Well, Chairman Roberts would like to move the bill in his committee in April after Easter. We'll see. He is much further behind than Chairman Conaway in terms of the drafting process. He's still in the process, going on into next week, of meeting with Republicans on the committee to hear them out to see what they want to be in the bill. So it's a tight time frame to have the bill in committee in April.
And staying on the Senate side of Capitol Hill, a number of you have been following developments as lawmakers look to fix a provision that was included in the recently passed tax bill, that being the 199A provision that a lot of people in agriculture say unfairly advantages co-ops over private grain handling companies. And Phil, you're hearing that they're getting very, very close to a fix on that provision?
I think they have the fix. They're very close to an announcement on it. It's going to kind of roll back some of the benefit for co-op members that came out of the tax bill, and that lawmakers say now was more than they intended, and disadvantaged some of the grain companies and dairy processors and so forth that are not set up as farmer cooperatives. But on the other hand, will more or less restore the co-ops themselves to the treatment that they were getting before this tax law passed. So stay tuned on that. We should have an announcement soon. The intent is to have this new provision, which will probably be retroactive and not permanent, put into the omnibus spending bill that may be on the House and Senate floor as early as next week, but has to pass by March the 23rd. So
stay tuned on that measure. Another thing we just want to wrap up here and let you know that we're still following this issue. Wasn't a ton of developments on it this week, but we continue to watch for changes in the discussion surrounding renewable fuels policy, specifically a debate over renewable identification numbers and the renewable fuel standard. I'm sure if you were following Agri-Pulse.com last week, you know that there was a lot of discussion on that. 2 meetings at the White House on the subject, a lot of discussion out at Commodity Classic in Anaheim, California, where I was joined by Sarah Wyant from Agri-Pulse last week discussing this issue. And so didn't see any concrete public developments on that, but we did see a number of studies were published this week on the subject. Still are awaiting the analysis from the Department of Agriculture, who is said to be working on an economic analysis of what a cap on the price of those renewable identification numbers would do to demand of ethanol and biofuels here in the United States, and what that would mean to the renewable fuel standard in the legislative intent thereof. So
those are the numbers that are really going to count, because those are the numbers that the president asked for. We're told in the meeting last week. So that's the analysis he's going to get, and it's going to probably go a long way toward determining how this situation is resolved.
So in the meantime, this week there were a number of steel workers in town pushing for RFS reform. I understand there were a lot of meetings behind the scenes in the biofuel space as well, trying to come up with a unified message. And so we continue to watch for developments on that, and we'll be keeping an eye on that and all of the other issues that we cover here at Agri-Pulse.com in the coming weeks and months. I think that's going to do it for this week. So for Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.